Well, what a great introduction. Thanks, marketing. This made our job really easy today. I'm Gerald Schlechter, co-founder and CTO of enosix, working 20 plus years in the SAP space, doing and helping top brands integrating their CRM systems, their e-commerce systems, and various other systems with their SAP backends. And as many of you probably, we all used different methods: coding, downloading, uploading. We used XI, we used PI, we used PO. All of those we kind of patched together to make it somehow work and make the data available in the engagement systems. And that made me realize that there's actually no good tool that has in one spot everything a developer needs to integrate business processes with the ERP system. There's not one spot where there is reusable data clearly available in a structured form for a developer to make integration simple. And the new intelligent enterprise can't live with that anymore. It needs a new standard for integration. And that's what we're going to talk today about. I don't know who was at the keynote this morning from Jürgen Müller. Awesome to see that graph was finally launched, and we share those objectives and share that common unified model to the back end. So we will tie, obviously, into the graph piece as well, if that's a question coming up. enosix is doing this for a while, for a couple of years, helping top brands integrating with various front-end engagement systems. We are obviously ECC and S for HANA certified, and we have a lot of SAP experience that we put in our enosix Connect platform that Erik will talk in a minute here. Let me talk about the customer experience and the customer story and why this is so relevant. For example, Carhartt, their estimated project to integrate into a Salesforce tool for a Customer 360 view for their call centers, where their customers are calling in with problems, was estimated to be up to 9 months, depending on functionality. We got them launched in weeks through a smart integration and pre-built components. They were avoiding the reinventing the wheel, building complex process integration from scratch, and dealing with complex presentation integration, which is not easy to do, to make it real seamless in the engagement tool. That's a key that we deliver as well. How are we tackling this? So our approach goes from the engagement cloud, sales, service, CPQ, VC, B2B community, and others. And we, in real time, connect them through our Connect and framework. Erik will talk about that, into the SAP backend system through pre-built advanced ABAP objects. I'll cover that part, and then Erik will show actually a real-time demo how we set all this up here. So we really made it our mission with one click to enable a hybrid cloud where you can seamlessly connect to your SAP ERP and activate and publish pre-built APIs that fit those engagement clouds, and then use them and leverage them in the engagement clouds with your developers or through presentation integration templates that we offer as well. The key is those pre-built objects here. So typically we see lead to cash for those clouds, but obviously we have other ones as well. But we can handle customers, quotes, orders. So typical process would be order entry triggered from a quote, or configurable products, variant configuration in a CPQ tool, or service notifications for cases in a service cloud. On the SAP side, in the backend, we are on the NetWeaver and ABAP stack. So that's a little different than what you see probably with other integration tools. So this is installed as an add-on, SAP certified, obviously, on your SAP in the cloud or on-premise. And we deliver a proprietary communication framework that allows complex objects to be transferred in real time between the backend and the front end. Obviously, this is full CRUD. This is not just read-only. And that allows us that we can enable deep object structures and talk like engagement systems want to talk with SAP. So we're talking about customers, we're talking about sales orders, we're talking about service notifications. And with one single call, we actually can provide the whole data model that's necessary for the developer. We have some personalization of the API scenarios, and then we have advanced ABAP objects that are native ABAP classes that we extended to fit and provide the data properly for the engagement clouds. So instead of you going in there and having to call 5 puppies and know the sequences and do all the orchestration of that, we did that for you. So that's all pre-built, all pre-tested, and tested with top brands. And all that, Erik will show how all this is going to be available through our enosix Connect platform. Erik, maybe you take this here and explain a little how the lifecycle methods are really important for the standardization. Again, keep in mind, a lot what we do is we provide a standardized approach for integration. So instead of doing all those one-offs and figuring out how to manage it, how to organize it so it's in one system and in the other system the same, move it from dev to quality, and then upgrade it, we help to standardize that whole process. It will make sense when Erik shows our Connect platform where you can configure all that, and our lifecycle methods support it so that every call to your ERP backend is for the developer the same methodology.
Yeah. So as Gerald said, we have pre-built packages of these advanced ABAP classes, and it's important to note that we follow these lifecycle methods that we've created that effectively align us for basically every interaction scenario that's transactional within SAP. So when we think about doing standard CRUD interaction, traditionally we're looking at searching, we're going to initialize objects, we're going to get the details, we might be creating something or just running a command against an object or a canonical model. And when we see that, most of these are reused over and over again depending on whatever scenario you're taking a look at. So effectively, the base classes that we have on the ABAP side allow us to kind of adhere to any situation that is going to occur within SAP ERP. And then from there, the front end, we allow standardized interaction from even those that might not be that familiar with ABAP interaction or SAP interaction. So really kind of standardizing every one of our interactions with SAP, regardless of what the underlying tables or data looks like.
One other important thing here to mention is we humanized all those objects. So we took out Kundenar, which I know that's Kundennummer in German, but no developer would know that, so it's customer number, and you can translate all that, you can translate all the messages. And that will be really important for a developer as well when we talk later about in the SAP Cloud Platform, right? You will not just have native ABAP developers anymore, but you will have Java developers and others that might not be very familiar with the data structures of SAP. So we humanized this with those ABAP objects. Key advantages, it's all about standardization, reusability, and scalable. Like, think about you have Sales Cloud, CPQ Cloud, Service Cloud, Customer Community, and you have integrations flowing from all of those. If you do one-off integrations and you want to scale that, that's a big task to manage internally. So we help with our pre-built components and with our platform to manage that. Data is virtualized, no synchronization. So we focus really on real-time calls, and our framework enables the performance so you can transfer and call complex data models that are optimized for your developers for those clouds. SAP processes are virtualized. That means order creation is already pre-built. We know with years of experience, why should we do that over and over? We put that knowledge all into those ABAP objects, and they handle all the follow-up processes and calls that you would manually have to do or then to test. Works as well on ECC and already on S/4HANA. So if you're thinking about S/4HANA, then we got you covered. Prepackaged of the integration flows. I just touched on that, but one more thing I want to mention here. It's very difficult to do presentation layer integration with processes. They need to be designed a certain way, they need to react a certain way, so it's really a seamless user interface for the customers. We did that in our solutions. And then the last one, a simpler shift from ECC to S/4HANA, and that's because if you build already on ECC, for example, integrations with our platform, then it runs already on S4. So we have the new data models in there, the new processes in there, and we can activate it. So it's a very easy transition, and you don't have to recode from scratch the integrations.
All right.
So Erik, that was all the slides, and now the fun part that everybody was waiting on actually a live demo of what enosix Connect is.
Kind of jumped the gun there. I was ready to go and pumped here. All right, so we want to talk about the next generation of enosix. When we talk about interaction with SAP and integration with SAP, what does the future look like for us? And so when we start thinking about this, basically it all surrounds digital transformation. We want to make that easier, and we want to enable interactions that weren't previously possible because we have a specific framework and a specific technology on the SAP side that we get to utilize. But really what we want to do is kind of make that a little bit broader. So what I have here is our integration philosophy. Effectively needs to be standardized, needs to be reusable, it needs to be scalable, and it needs to be SAP everywhere in real time. So effectively, whatever's in your SAP system, we want to be able to access that regardless of what your front-end platform is. So for the demonstration, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at deployment of a hybrid cloud integration platform to SCP. This is the new enosix Connect platform. We're going to configure and publish OpenAPI endpoints. From there, we're going to review our ABAP framework on the SAP side, and then from there, we're going to take a look at creating an order through a presentation layer integration using those APIs that were set up. So
just to let that sink in, we're going to deploy, we're going to configure the APIs we need, we're going to use them, and then we're going to see a UI result. So that's all packed in the steps that usually are included.
So I wanted to pause here and just kind of point out what we were kind of known for in the past. Real-time integration from Salesforce to SAP. These are the presentation components that our customers know us for and love us for. All this occurs in real time in Salesforce. We're not actually synchronizing any of this, but we just want to point out this is kind of the current state where we have, where it's a point-to-point integration between Salesforce and SAP. Now, going from that, we need to obviously make it broader to where everybody, that regardless of whatever consumption platform you're using, is going to be able to access all this rich SAP data from anywhere. So what we should take a look at now.
So this is just an example of one presentation cloud. This is the Sales Cloud in Salesforce. Obviously, you could use that as well for SAP Sales Cloud to enrich that data, or any other cloud system, even your homegrown portals. To expose data there as well.
So I'm going to start here kind of with the end. We're going to go ahead and take a look at what a presentation integration is going to look like from a React component or any kind of web component as it hits our API platform. Effectively, we can recreate screens like a VA01 transaction within the SAP system, but we can do that from anywhere using modern web technologies against our API endpoints. So we'll get into how this happens in a moment. But effectively, these components are created and then can be hosted anywhere on any front-end platform. So what we want to take a look at now is our new enosix Connect platform. enosix Connect allows us to create environments, have multiple connections for those environments, and then create projects, which are collections of APIs, and move those through different environments seamlessly without any real SAP knowledge needed from the background. So we expect an administrator to be able to do all these things. We've chosen a hybrid approach, meaning a hybrid cloud integration approach. For this demonstration, we're going to be utilizing SAP's cloud platform. We also have support for Heroku, and we'll have support for AWS, Azure, and GCP by the end of the year here. So let's take a look at environments. Environments, again, are what you would think they would be on the development side, where you have a dev, a test, and a production environment. Effectively, environments allow us to segregate different data based off of how ready the data is to be utilized, or how ready the applications are ready to be utilized. These things are deployed actually out to SCP. I mentioned that before, so let's take a look at that right now while Wi-Fi loads. This deployment's on our cloud platform, and this is utilizing right now Cloud Foundry for our deployments. We utilize Docker for all of our container management, and then from there we actually push those containers down into our SAP cloud platform. So I've already created one for us today. We can see here we've got our sub account. From there we also have spaces, and then inside of those spaces we have deployed applications. Jumping ahead, we'll take a look at the APIs that are deployed to the spaces, and this is actually what we're going to be communicating with in order to create a custom application like this. So you see all of our endpoints here. We have different ABAP objects that are available to us, and then each one of those have been broken down into RESTful endpoints that we can then utilize anywhere within our application development.
So Erik, what you just showed is like we can set up all those environments. We can pick through the hybrid cloud approach. Either we want to deploy this on SCP, we can deploy it on Heroku, we can deploy it on AWS. It's a cloud that our customers own. It deploys the environments, and then it would deploy all the selected API endpoints as well, configured from enosix Connect. So an admin can do that, and those are the results.
Absolutely.
On those hybrid cloud platforms.
So this would be the resultant API endpoint, or the OpenAPI document that we would utilize. Obviously, we can test through this for anybody that's familiar with OpenAPI or Swagger standards. We could go in and take a look at the individual commands and what it would take in order to pass those along. These are all fully documented, as well as the entire platform. And let's jump over there and take a look. So environments, again, are sections of different types of applications or different types of APIs that are going to be propagated until we get to a production state. We can have as many environments as we want, because it's basically just a container or a category of where the application state is. What we want to take a look at is this development environment, and we're going to take a look at a couple things in here. So the development environment itself here.
Erik, before we go there, why are the environments so important? Like, I know when we did the design, we discussed the similarities to SAP that differentiates us from other integration places. Can you explain that real quick? Because I think that's a core element that's really important here.
Yeah. So for a standard software development lifecycle on both ends of integration, even SAP, Salesforce, or whatever you're developing on your front end, effectively there's traditionally a 3-tier environment structure. That would be like a dev, test, and a production. Obviously, you can have more than that. You can have a QA environment or multiples of all of those. But what we want, through our experience in interacting with API type integrations and a lot of partners that have been utilizing other systems, traditionally what happens is you create APIs and then they all end up into a big bucket of APIs. So organizing those things per individual project or per what state those APIs are in is oftentimes left up to a guess or by a name of the API. For us, this follows the standard software development lifecycle that we're used to on both ends of that agreement. It just carries that metaphor, the design metaphor, all the way through to integration.
So you basically can mimic, when you transfer from your dev to quality and to the testing, what you move on the API side as well. Like some APIs are not ready yet, so you don't want to move them to quality yet. So you're totally in control to keep your SAP and your API configuration technically intact and manage that from the platform.
Now, we mentioned we were going to show the creation of an environment. The Wi-Fi is a little bit odd here, but effectively this is how easy it is to provision your resources. Basically, you're going to set up a new environment. We'll call this one something very unique and obvious for our developers to catch on later. When we make a selection here, we're going to be prompted to display where we're going to be deploying this. We're going to select a project here. A project is a grouping of APIs that we're going to configure in a moment, but right here is where we're actually going to make our selection for where we're going to be deploying this. Again, as we mentioned, SCP is our main target right now. We're going to take a look at the endpoints. So each one of these endpoints are actually the SCP cloud servers that we have available to do the deployments. I'm going to choose this US East Virginia. We'll push next. And then from here, this is actually how we get our SSO auth token. So when I click on this, this is going to have us log into SCP. We'll get our token, and that's going to allow our Connect platform to interact with SCP as my underlying user. So when we think about things like provisioning resources or provisioning images in order to have those as deployment targets, this is how we're doing it. We're actually acting as my user here. So we'll put in our temporary code. And then from here, we would go through the configuration process of selecting our sub-account, which we took a look at within the SCP platform, and then the space in which we want to deploy this to. So if we wanted to actually deploy this one to test, well, we certainly could do that. If we wanted to configure an additional space that we want to deploy this project to, or this environment to, we could do that as well.
So when you think about this, this is really targeted towards an admin as well level. So to set this up in SCP with the knowledge you would need, that would take a while. We automate all the backend steps with SAP, and it's all deployed to your SAP cloud environment.
Exactly. So no need to understand or really have any knowledge of the underlying resource structure within the SAP environment, SAP cloud environment. And we try to make this agnostic as possible when it comes to the other backend cloud providers. So when we go to Google Cloud or AWS, this is going to be the same thing where we expect an administrator to administrate the APIs, not the machines. They don't need to know about that. We have the machine definitions down for that. So effectively, we go through the deployment. That deployment then pushes our resources out to our SAP cloud environment, and then from there, we would go ahead and add APIs. So this is the example we have of a deployed environment here, and that's where our Swagger API endpoint exists. Now, when we think about adding APIs, it's important to think about what kind of logical grouping these APIs are going to be with. Traditionally, we see this as more of a project base. So most of the time, project teams are working together. You have a purchasing team, you have an order entry team. Effectively, APIs are grouped together based off of what you're going to be doing with them. So we have that same kind of metaphor built into the system. We'd expect a user to go in and add a project. From an added project, let's take a look at this, my first project, smart named here. From this project, we would go ahead and select the APIs, and this is going to be where we're going to jump back into the actual SAP system so you can see where these are defined. But effectively, we're going to select the APIs from this screen, and we'll use our development environment. Push next, and then we're going to get a list of all of the APIs that are available within the SAP system. So
those are pre-built APIs that we deliver that have logic around them that's optimized for the various clouds already. So you don't have to worry about all the detailing. The authorization is built in, process orchestration. If there's multiple public to be called, they all have those lifecycle methods already in. So you can search, you can go do detail transactions, you can do update, and you can create automatically with them. So that's a big set of pre-built components for you that you can select from.
So let's jump in and actually take a look at those. Here's what we'll do. I jumped over to my ECC system, logged in. This is actually our transaction we have within the ECC system. So this is the certified add-on. We'll take a look at set up and maintain business objects in here. And within this, we have the ability to define new business objects or new advanced ABAP objects. And then from there, we would configure those to an underlying ABAP class. So when I make the selection here, you can see we've got lots and lots and lots of different ABAP classes that are prepackaged. We have a few that have been overwritten, so we have some Z classes that are overriding some of the implementations on this server. But the important part is we have predefined sets that are matching up to the underlying modules within SAP. So effectively, when we think about like variant configuration or order creation, those are grouped logically. We deploy those as transports, and then you have the ability to extend and override those and generate OpenAPI endpoints based off of those. So all the interaction happens very quickly in the back-end SAP system. Your ABAP developers are happy because they continue to develop in ABAP. And we have the ability to use modern tools like React and OpenAPI against those back-end ABAP classes. So what's in a underlying SAP advanced ABAP object? Let's take a look. So I'm going to copy this class name. We'll jump in and we can just kind of take a look at the complexity. We're not going to go line by line here. I assume everybody would fall asleep at that point, so we won't do that. Let's actually jump in and take a look at SC24 on this class.
So it's all object-oriented. That's a big differentiator as well. It's not so much transaction and table-based, but it's really object-oriented structure that is easy to understand and then easy to be used to create maybe your own libraries from that as well. If you have custom tables, obviously all the append structures that are in SAP and are done with standard enhancements, user access and all that stuff is taken care of. But if you have data that you want to merge in there, you can easily extend those through the ABAP inheritance and then add your own code, and it's available through the enosix Connect for the front-end consumption.
Exactly. So this is just a quick glimpse at just the function or the methods that are inside this ABAP class. Obviously, there are lots, and this is only our invoice detail object, which would be used for creating, updating, and getting the details of an underlying invoice. We have these for basically every interaction from quote to cash or opportunity to cash, all the way through SAP in the ABAP classes. We have those pre-built, but this is just an example. We want to show you just because the complexity is happening behind the scenes. This is a standardized approach. We have this in our large grouping of classes that we have are very, very complex, and basically we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes there. So I'm going to transition back over. We're going to take a look at the API selection here. We've got our APIs already been added. We see lots and lots of different APIs added to this, but what do we do with this? Effectively, we select the API endpoints. Now we want to do something with it. Let's go ahead and create an order within the SAP system. So I will go to a deployed React application that we've created. I'm going to take a look at our Swagger document here, and I'm going to copy our URL. And then from there, I'll paste that in here. So we say API endpoint URL, push apply. And then from here, we can do a customer search. And that customer search is going to take a look at all of the customers in the SAP system. And again, this is in a React application that can be hosted anywhere. And our interaction model is we host this within whatever kind of front-end technology you want to use. If it's Calidus Cloud, if it's Salesforce, that's fine. Modern web application can be hosted and utilized anywhere. Basically, if it can make a web call out, you can call our enosix Connect platform. But from here, we can go ahead and make a selection for our customer. Click OK. Now, we mentioned all this happens in real time, so we interact with SAP in real time, and a lot of times there are a lot of transactions that occur in order to create an individual screen here. At this point, we added several different APIs, but effectively we're making about 3 calls in order to display this screen. We've got a lot of dynamic drop-downs here for the different individual like sales orgs, divisions, distribution channels. We can also take a look at partners as well if we want to do a search for partners and add a different ship to. We want to make a selection there, that's fine. More importantly, adding materials. We want to do a material search. We can pop up an application or a mini component that looks like this. We can do a wide open search against all of the materials in SAP. And then from there, we can add a few items and push OK.
So Erik, a couple of questions here. So,
yep.
Like you mentioned dynamic drop-downs. What does that mean? What does that mean in regards to authorization, in regards to sales organizational structures for the user? And then the second one, like this screen as component, how flexible is that to adjust for a developer?
Sure. So the first question has to do with authorization. We actually enforce all the authorization on the SAP side. So we can utilize a service user within our Connect platform for a given environment and act as that service user in order to interact against the system. This is a pretty traditional integration method. Another way that we can do it with our enosix Connect platform is actually pass web tokens. So if you have a web token from SSO within the SAP cloud platform, we can utilize that web token, act as the user against the SAP system, all using SSO, just passing the JWT web tokens over. So all authentication, authorization are handled on the SAP side of things. Obviously, we could do some client-side validation on the front end, so we don't have to hit the SAP server when it's not necessary. But effectively, all the authentication authorization happens on the SAP side, and it's enforced there.
And then, obviously, the drop-downs and anything that's needed on the screen is dynamically pulled with the business logic in SAP. So if somebody would change, add another division, which probably doesn't happen a lot, but add shipping conditions or something like that, the distribution channel, that would be available immediately without touching the logic on the screen.
Yeah.
Because it dynamically goes, simulates the business logic that's configured for this sales organization, gets the values back, and builds the screens as well. That's a huge advantage. You're not sitting there and coding for every organization. You're going to deploy that manually, the field entries.
And that was a big win whenever we used to focus on Salesforce development. Oftentimes, this was a synchronized object where you would synchronize lots and lots of these small used once on this screen here for like shipping conditions in SAP. Only used in order entry scenario, not really useful for the rest of Salesforce or whatever other consuming system. So having that as a real-time call out, not dual maintaining it, is very important.
It's all built for scalability, as we said before. It inherits the logic of the business, and then you can deploy it to multiple organizations very easily and scalable without rebuilding every single time.
So let's go ahead and create this. Now, when we create it, we'll get our results back in real time. We've got, I'm not sure we'll be able to see it on the screen here, but we've got our real-time messaging coming back from SAP. So any kind of status messages that occur when we're interacting with SAP, we're going to raise those back to the API platform in which you could do whatever you want with. Right now, we're just displaying those as mini notifications on the top here, but more importantly, we created an order within SAP. We could take that order number and we could take a look in our SAP system. Let's take a look at transaction VA03. And we can take a look at that order that was created in real time. So we can see the pricing is there. We do order simulation for pricing to get all of the pricing information out, but you can see the price matches identically, 913.40. We have our 3 different items that we added as part of the order creation process. But if we didn't want to go into SAP to check this, if we were just a modern web developer that doesn't know much about SAP, we could go back to our either Swagger endpoint and take a look at the order details, which I'll do here. We'll pass over that ID by pushing try it out and then execute. Now, when we execute, this is making literally the same call that our prior screen was making. We can see the look of the body here of the response, and here's the actual request URL. So if we were creating a new modern web application, regardless of Vue, React, any modern JavaScript app, or if you're doing something totally different, like a Watch app off of iOS or watchOS, or if you're doing C#, .NET, it really doesn't matter so long as you can create a web call out. But what's more important is the canonical data model that we're bringing back with that individual call. So we made a single call by passing an ID over to our backend SAP system. And from there, we've got lots and lots of different but relevant information coming back with that single call. So we've got header information, sales information as it relates to that underlying order, shipping information, and then the underlying items along with the individual conditions and any rates that we passed along. So we pass in one ID, we get all this information back, and then we can create a UI that looks a little bit something like this, to where we can have all the partners, all the order statuses, the header information, and the items all displayed, all with a single call out. So very powerful. You don't have to stage 40 different BOPs in order to interact with the SAP system and pull that information back. You can extend all of our objects and then generate new APIs based off of that extension. So if you're running any industry solutions, if you have any custom Z fields or Z transactions, you can integrate all of those into our ABAP classes and then create a new OpenAPI endpoint based off of those backend ABAP classes. So let's kind of do a recap here. We initially took a look and provisioned a hybrid cloud integration platform to SCP, our enosix Connect. We configured and published OpenAPI endpoints that represent pre-built backend scenarios, the SAP advanced ABAP objects that we have. We took a look at our SAP framework and those advanced ABAP objects, and then we wrapped up with an order creation from a React app that's calling our APIs directly in order to interact with SAP right there.
Pretty cool, Erik.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
I think that's pretty much what I said before. Now, everything I need as a developer is in one platform. I have it accessible there for deployment, for publishing, for the UI presentation integration, and as well for configuring my APIs that I want to need. And most of them are pre-built for me, so it makes it really easy to do custom development. And obviously that sits on SCP right now, would sit on SCP, so I can use it as well for other custom application developments that I'm going to do on my cloud platform on SAP as well. And that makes it pretty powerful.
Exactly. And when we think about what's deployed to SCP and what's hosted on SCP, effectively we can utilize those API endpoints exactly how you would any other application within SCP. So all the authentication rule sets within SCP itself are going to be enforced as far as spaces and also sub-accounts. So when we think about APIs that are deployed, obviously we can deploy to any space or any sub-account. With that, you can certainly have certain sections of your organization utilizing APIs that aren't exposed anywhere else. You can show or hide those APIs as a public endpoint, or if you want to do that only internally, you certainly could do that as well. And that's really just the flexibility of SCP. We get to kind of tag along with that with our deployment structure going directly to SCP. So that's a real big point here. We have multiple layers of authentication and authorization permissions there. Not only as far as accessing the data for the underlying user, but the deployment and then the utilization of those API endpoints are all enforced there.
Awesome. I think that wraps up your demo.
Yeah.
And we'll open it up for any questions there are.
Could you go into a little more detail on what if you're doing some...
Oh, sorry, I'll get a mic. It's recorded.
I was just wondering if you could go into a little bit more detail on what if you're doing some, you've got your own Z classes, Z fields, and things like that, and what happens if you want to, how do you get those into the enosix APIs, and how do you manage that after you've done some of that modification on the back end?
Yeah.
Sure. Let's take a look at SCP or SAP. So effectively, we've got our own base classes for the types of integrations we have. We have
It's not showing, Erik.
Oh, sorry. Here you go. So we'll jump back into this portal we have here. We have base classes on the SAP side that allow us to create the standard integrations, and we've got search objects and detail objects. From there, we also can expose any function call that you have as well. So any kind of RFC or any built-in function module you have within the SAP system, we can also expose via that API platform. So what we tend to do is during implementation, we take a look at what the use case is. If it's something that needs a complex interaction, like object-oriented interaction, like order creation, for instance, that traditionally we would go ahead and create a advanced ABAP object that follows that same pathway, so like a detail object. We would take a look at what the underlying usage was, so we would extend one of our objects to fit that, or we would create a new one to wrap that. If it's something more simple, if you just want to get a list of data back, or you have something like a quick transaction or a quick function you just need the results out of, we actually can just call the function module directly without having to recreate the wheel there.
If I don't know what specifics you're talking, but for example, if you have a custom table that you need to get data from and you want to enrich one of our classes, you would inherit our class, create a separate Z class for you, and then add that code to it. And then you can, if you go to the customization, Erik,
Sure.
Because you don't want to code in the framework, you can then configure and redirect for your application. For example, if you're saying enosix inquiry, you want to replace that with your Z class, then you configure that there, and the front end picks that up automatically and then redirects it. There is other methods as well where you can have different application configurations, so you could have different ones for different business units or different ones for different devices. If you have phone, you need less data or something like that, you can configure that down so it only transfers the data needed for those different applications. So it's all through configuration and not coding changes. So fairly easy for an ABAP developer and an admin to manage that themselves.
Okay.
Yep.
So for the future releases, are you colliding with OData services in any way, or is this a complementary service to what SAP is offering as well? In terms
This would be complementary. So we're not utilizing OData. We have a web service that's hosted in the ICF node within SAP. That allows us to have those complex object structures that we have there. So there were some limitations with OData. That's why we chose not to go with that as far as the data structure that we wanted to bring back with a single call. Effectively, they can live side by side with one another. But basically, for every OData service that we see, there are a lot of times when it didn't exactly fit the needs of our customers as far as doing searches or pagination and that kind of thing. So where that was kind of lacking, our custom data structures and framework allowed us to kind of circumnavigate any kind of limitations we had with OData there. So it can run in parallel. You obviously can have OData services set up in an SAP server. This is not going to collide with that. We're in our own namespace for all of this. So effectively, you'd be calling this service for your transactional integration. And then if you wanted to do something like reporting or something like that, you certainly could set up your OData endpoint and run through that. But transactionally speaking, OData is probably not the answer, and that's really where we shine in a lot of this.
is that because of scalability, or
OData? OData for transactional?
no? Do you pull yourself apart from OData services in terms of scalability, or what separates you from that?
Scalability is one facet of it, of the conversation, but more functionally, when we think about transacting against SAP, OData is not a really great model, especially when you think about like child collections of items, for instance. When we pass an OData request, it's certainly not as verbose, or it couldn't be as big as when we're passing an entire XML model. So effectively, that can be recursively as big as you want it to be effectively. we can pass that over, parse those requests, and then process that information as we see fit. Whereas OData, there's a lot of limitations when it comes to processing data against the SAP system with those built-in endpoints. So it gave us some flexibility, and it also allowed us to define those, the lifecycle methods that we had up there, where it was initialize, search, get details, run a command, et cetera. So effectively allowed us to structure those components better, and then allows for that reusability between projects, to where that document structure, that data structure is going to exist beyond just like a single OData endpoint. It's going to be the same for every interaction we have transactionally against SAP.
And scalability, is that something you have to predetermine and manually scale, or is it auto-scaling, this one?
Oh, on the SCP side?
Yeah.
So actually, it's pretty low resources that are required. Effectively, it's set up to automatically scale, but a lot of times that's not automatically configured within an SCP environment. So if your administrator on the SCP side has set that up to auto-scale or allow auto-scaling, we'll allow it to auto-scale if you hit that restriction. But honestly, we haven't done that, and we've done a lot of parallel testing to where it hasn't been an issue. So it will automatically scale if it needs to be, but we've not run into that as a problem right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. There is a VIP event happening tomorrow. We'll hand out some flyers for that. Please join us for free cocktails, and we'll send you some invitations as well.